Hello and welcome back to another Tropical Depression number 3 update. Today is Saturday, June the 5th, 2020, and I am once again here in Dauphin Island, Alabama, a small barrier island off the coast of mainland Alabama. And my longtime friend, greatest buddy in the world, Mike Ederer, in Pascagoula area, coastal Mississippi. We've been doing these forecasts for a long time before there was a such thing as digital cell phones. Anyway, if you've watched the past couple of updates, we've kind of been waiting for this storm to make its northerly turn and northerly jog back into the Gulf of Mexico, and it has made that turn. So we'll get into some graphics. I'll even show you some of the water levels right here outside of my door that I've begun to rise just a bit, and then we'll get into some graphics, and I think my buddy Mike has a forecast for landfall for the center of circulation. So let's get right into it. Hopefully everybody's well, so let's go. Alright, so I just wanted to come downstairs briefly just so I can show you that the water levels have already begun to rise. So on the other side, it's easier to see, but there's a bulkhead on the other side where you can see the pilings that come up in front of that bulkhead. So the water is already pushed on above that bulkhead on this side. We have a double bulkhead on this side, so it's higher, but you can see the water is already pushed up in to our yard. So it is high tide, but generally at high tide the water level is still a good foot below those pilings. So watch out coastal areas, especially from, say, the Grand Isle, Louisiana area eastward, all the way to over maybe the Florida Panhandle. Again, we're right here in Dauphin Island, Alabama. That is the Gulf of Mexico, Mobile Bay as they meet. And again, Mike is over on the Mississippi coast. All right, so a quick look at where the storm began and where the storm currently is. So this is a look at the track of Tropical Depression number 3. So it started here in this general area and moved, of course, to the west, then to the south, south-southeast, east-southeast, and now is taking its turn to the north. So this graphic is about 2 hours old. So the center of circulation currently is basically right in this area. So now the storm is moving to the north-northeast, and as you can see, the pressure is right at around 1,000 millibars. So as it gets into this warmer water here in the Gulf of Mexico, that's about the area where we're going to start seeing this storm re-intensify. Okay, so we're going to take the latest loop of the infrared radar and kind of take a look at what's going on here with Tropical Depression 3. I do think that this will eventually become Tropical Storm Cristobal once again. So the center of circulation, again, is still right here, still basically over land. So you can see that on the western side of this storm, we've had an air intrusion. So the storm is now moving north or north-northeast at 7 miles an hour. So it's picked up steam just by a little bit, but it's also drawn in some of this drier air, which may make it very difficult for this storm to gain a lot of strength. Again, we've talked about the water temperature here in the Gulf of Mexico. At the surface, it's generally around 80, 81 degrees, but this early in the season, the cooler water is only just below the skin, if that makes any sense. So if we just get below the skin with temperature, when this storm moves through it and it churns up the water, the cooler water actually gets drawn into the storm and kind of it just kind of stars the storm out. It doesn't allow it to strengthen. So this storm, again, is moving to the north, north, and east. The storm is projected to enter into the Gulf of Mexico sometime this afternoon. So if you look at the storm, the eastern side of it over here is your wet side, or is the meat or the hunk of your storm. So if this storm moves north, okay, and were to make landfall, and by the way, I'll kind of tease this out there, but my buddy Mike and Pascagoula or coastal Mississippi area has projected this storm. Again, the center of circulation is just below where I am. Mike has projected the landfall to be somewhere near Grand Isle, Louisiana, which I think is a really good forecast. He's generally really good about being really close with his landfalls. But if that is true, so if Mike's forecast is true, and I know he studies it a lot, he is in the Pascagoula area or Mississippi Gulf Coast. I am here on this little tiny barrier island off the coast of Alabama called Dauphin Island. So if this holds true and the storm moves north, then the meat of this storm will come right over both Mike and I's location. So what does that mean? Let's look at a couple other graphics and let's try to put this into what does it mean to you if you are in this area. All right, a quick look at the current wind forecast for the next 24 hours off of this tropical depression number 3, which should be at this point, once again, tropical storm Cristobal. So in the center part of this field, it represents around 50 mile per hour winds and counting down to 0 outside of the green. So if the storm came ashore, once again, as Mike has predicted, and it looks like this model kind of predicts almost the same thing, at least on its trajectory. So we'll have the wind force running in this direction, which leads to storm surge. So we have to be careful with New Orleans, Louisiana here. So in the New Orleans area, we have to look out for significant flooding. We have to make sure the levees are being maintained. So I'm sure there's a lot of stress right now in the New Orleans area. All the way across the coast of Louisiana, actually. Moving to the east, coastal Mississippi, where Mike is. I know there's a lot of casinos that run along the coast, a lot of prime real estate, as well as we run across coastal Alabama and into the Florida Panhandle. So I think the wind, as moving forward, will stay about this type strength. It may jump up again. So if the center delineates 50 mile an hour winds here, I think it's going to strengthen a bit, but not terribly much. So let's say we max out at 70 mile an hour winds, 75 mile an hour winds. We'll probably get those just off center of the storm, which will lead to, again, surging, flooding, etc. Off to the eastern side, though, we're going to be looking at heavy rainfall and a lot of rainfall. There is a possibility that when this storm moves to the north, it does kind of veer off a little bit to the west. So if that occurs, then you're going to be looking at heavy, heavy rain along this coastal area for quite a long period of time. So below sea level, high tides coming and going, erosion, sand piling up in one location and leaving another location along coastal areas is definitely high on the possibility list. So coastal Louisiana, central Louisiana, coastal Mississippi, coastal Alabama, and into the Florida Panhandle. Watch out for coastal problems. Look out for rip tides, rip currents. So I would stay out of the water. I wouldn't be surprised if the beaches in these areas were actually closed. All right, so we're going to do a quick look at the most recent set of spaghetti models. And by the way, I just found out a really cool feature on my phone that I use. It's a picture. Let's get down. So, hey, got the reading glasses on, but it's all good. So on this map here, you can see where this reading of 1,003 millibars is where the storm is currently located. However, the most recent reading is actually 1,000 millibars. By the way, that is the barometric pressure. So as the pressure drops, the storm gets stronger. It becomes more active, more dense. As the pressure rises, the storm becomes weaker. So the lower the number, the more intense the storm, and the higher the number, the weaker the storm. So this is just a group of spaghetti models. If you followed these updates since the very beginning, I think this was the third one, so since number 1, the models have kind of been all over the place. They still look that way, I guess, but really to me, and I know to Mike, that they have kind of a unison now. So these cones are kind of fixed in this general area. There's a couple outliers over here coming right over where I am located. But again, so if this storm follows this track, I think what we're going to find is that, number 1, the surf is going to be up. So if you surf out there, then rip it up. I think after the storm passes, once that southerly flow of wind comes on shore, I think that'll be the cleaner time to go out and surf. So current models are all kind of honing in, whether it deviates to the west or whether it deviates to the east. It's not really going to matter here. This isn't one of those storms that has a concentric eye with really heavy winds around that eye. It's really a big, big, big rainmaker. And depending upon how warm the water goes deep, I guess you could say, and that will determine how strong the storm gets by means of windfall or wind and etc. But hey, it looks like all the models are coming into play. I don't know why the pressure reading is off on this one, but it is currently at 1,000 millibars. So just another quick glance at another set of models, and I love this new option on my phone. Let's go. But this is a kind of a cleaner setup with a fewer, kind of more dependable or reliable models. So it's just a cleaner set. So if you look at it here, this gives you a better example of the major models coming together as one. So big shout out to Mike here because he predicted Grand Isle, Louisiana about 2 days ago, and it looks to be right on target there. So hey, again, that would indicate that this general area and the coastal areas of Florida, of the Florida Panhandle, of coastal areas of Alabama, Orange Beach, Gulf Shores, Dauphin Island, into the Biloxi, Pascagoula area, all the way over to the New Orleans area, need to watch out for some heavy rain, coastal flooding, namely New Orleans and the west end of Dauphin Island. So I think New Orleans and west end of Dauphin Island should be the most poised to expect some real flooding issues and a lot of movement of sand over the roads, especially on low-lying beach areas. All right, so a quick look at the overall wind speed and intensity models. So if you followed this or these updates since the very first one, a lot of these models that were here on this graph, and by the way, on the left axis, it is wind speed in terms of knots, which is just a little bit greater than a mile per hour. So it starts off at 0 miles per hour in terms of wind speed and goes all the way up to 70. 75 is actually where the tropical storm would actually head into a Category 1 hurricane. And on the bottom axis is 7 days out, 168 hours. So the models are now all congruent with one another. So before, some of these models would take it into the Category 1 hurricane level, but most of them now are all agreeing that this will stay a moderate to strong tropical storm. Well, why is that? The northerly speed it is moving at currently, and that is TD3, or what will soon be Tropical Storm Cristobal. The northerly speed is at 7 miles per hour, so it's increased in speed, number one. Number two, it stayed over land for a good period of time and traveled further south into the Yucatan than expected, so that led to diminishing. Also, it pulled in some wind shear, some drier air on the western side, so the storm is heavily lopsided to the east. And it's projected to increase in speed. So with that said, it doesn't have much time to gain strength. And as this storm begins to churn up water in the Gulf of Mexico, that is very warm on the surface, but cooler beneath the surface. That will begin to as well inhibit development of the storm. But nonetheless, 60 to 65 mile an hour winds are definitely enough to cause damage on the leeward side or the windward side of coastal or beach areas. So watch out for the winds. But again, on the eastern side of the storm with the heavy rains, I think that's going to be more of the focal point from the eastern portion of the storm moving forward. All right, so last graphic. So once again, where we are again located is in this general area. Both of us, Mike and I, Dauphin Island and the Mississippi. So again, when this storm moves north in this general direction, or whether it veers off to the northwest, or whether it kind of veers off to northeast and then back to the northwest, we have to pay attention to this. There's no escaping that. And unfortunately, with this storm, there is a large population of people in a large coastal area that must deal with this big swath or meat of the storm. So again, just keep your eyes on it. I don't think it will be, anything that's going to cause mass catastrophe. But nonetheless, a lot of property and a lot of people live along the coast and just a little inland. And these types of storms can cause some really, really big problems, especially with flooding. So keep your eyes on it. It is out there. You can already see these outer kind of feeder bands that are not terribly far offshore now. So they're pretty close to us. It's probably about 100 miles offshore at this point for the most distant feeder bands, which would probably put us here in Dauphin Island and coastal Mississippi having some squalls roll in. At least, moderate squalls, some, maybe an inch of rain, something like that, starting maybe tomorrow morning, tomorrow afternoon. So keep your eyes out. We'll keep you updated. Thanks, Mike, for everything. We'll see if your center of circulation landfall is right for Grand Isle, Louisiana. And I do think that both you and I will be getting the thick of it in terms of rainfall. So that's it. Take care. Much love to all of you out there. I enjoy doing these updates. I know Mike does. So we will see you guys next time. Get prepared if you're on the coast, if you're on the west end of Dauphin Island, Alabama, or if you're in low-lying coastal areas of the Florida Panhandle, the Mississippi coast, or especially and the below sea level lying areas, levee areas of New Orleans and Louisiana. So take care. The storm really should be Tropical Storm Cristobal relatively soon. And then we'll see what happens from there. So if you want to comment, please feel free to get involved in the comments below. It's always nice to talk weather with anyone, anytime. So take care. Much love, and we'll see what happens with Cristobal. See ya.